Pop Culture Pod. I am one of your hosts, Hunter, and I am here with Star Wars Episode 7's biggest fan, Juan, my co-host here. How's it going, buddy?
Pretty good, pretty good. I always like a good remake. Pretty great, though. I'm doing really good, man. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. I'm working on, just started up my new job recently, so I've been kind of grinding through a lot of training lately, but other than that, pretty good.
Yeah, I'm never a big fan of training, especially when it's something I've done before, because it's like you go in with this idea of how every place is exactly the same, and then they come in and tell you how much of an idiot you are because everything they do is somehow mysteriously different.
Yeah, the training videos that feel like they're 150 years old, but they try to make them like super polished and new and poppy or whatever is just exhausting. I had to sit through 4 hours of these videos, and the only thing that kept me awake was this freaking Ghost energy drink, not sponsored yet. But that 200 milligrams of caffeine, yeah, anytime now. That 200 milligrams of caffeine was the only thing that was standing between me and losing my job on the first day.
I feel that.
It is tough. It is tough.
It's actually funny you say that. When I started my current job a few years ago, I'm a truck driver, for those who don't know. As of right now, hopefully that'll be changing soon. I learned on a manual. Well, my first car was a manual, but driving a semi-truck manual is a little bit different. So I learned how to drive semis on manuals. I took my tests on manuals and all that stuff. And then my first few jobs, because I worked at like one of those hiring agencies, so you kind of move around a lot. And they're one of the only places that hire you without any experience. And every truck, dude, truck after truck, they were all automatic. They just kept giving me automatics. So the first time my truck had broken down and I had to use a manual, I hadn't driven one in almost a year. And I really had only driven it for the few weeks I was in training. I was like, well, this isn't going to go very well. And it was pretty rough. So I did that for, I don't even know, it was like a few weeks. And then the next job I had was manual, and I was there for a few months. And then I finally got a permanent job. And then for the next 2 or 3 years, it was all automatics. So when I got hired into my current job, he was like, most of our trucks are automatic. I'm like, awesome. And he was like, except for this manual truck you're going to drive every single day. Let's hop in it and I'll show you where to go. And I had to relearn how to drive a manual truck in front of the guy who had just hired me at higher by like $3 or $4 higher than they wanted to hire somebody. And I was sitting there grinding gears, flipping that trailer all left and right. It was so ghetto. I was so mad at myself, man. I was like, God, I promise. Just because I've been driving automatic. And he's looking at me like, right, I'm sure.
He's like, yeah, you sure you have a truck driving license?
It's like one of those, it's like the Patrick Star license. It's kind of like the face taped on it. Like, yeah, sure, whatever. Oh my God, dude. So what's been new with you other than work? What have you been up to?
I've been playing a good bit of Total War Warhammer. I've been watching a lot of the Nightreign. People play Nightreign on Twitch.
Okay.
And of course playing a lot of Deadlock. What about you?
So I'll start with Kingdom Come. I'm about halfway through the main story. I've done a decent amount of the side quests. There's not a whole lot of side quests, but I've done a decent amount of the ones that I've come across. I don't know how many hours I have in it. I'll see if I can get you that answer right now, but I've been grinding through that. I've been having a lot of fun. Not into super realistic games most of the time. This one's very realistic. You have to wash yourself. You have to eat. You have to sleep. All that sort of stuff. But I've been having a great time with that, dude. But my big thing, since you brought it up, I got into the Nightreign data. I mean, yeah, Nightreign, the Elden Ring Nightreign beta. There we go. And I played that a few times over the weekend. You want to talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, I'm down.
Okay. So, Elden Ring is one of my all-time favorite games. I have some of the collectible physical books that came with it. I have a big poster of the Lands Between on the wall. Probably have 400 or 500 hours into the game over all my characters. So when I got into this, I was super excited, and I got the gist of what it was, but I didn't really look into it enough because I like to be pretty surprised. Oh, also I got 20 hours in Kingdom Come, just by that offset. So anyways, I was a little surprised when I started playing it, like trying to get used to the leveling system, like how you restart every single time, how you start with the same weapons, and when you kill big bosses or any boss, really, you kind of get to choose between three options. Sometimes it's a buff, sometimes it's a weapon, sometimes it's an affinity to your weapons. No matter what a weapon you have, you might like deal frost damage, for example. So it took some use to getting to doing that because a lot of the weapons are from the main game, but they might not always be builds you're used to doing. The next was how I guess the map kind of changes, but it kind of doesn't. So it's like you can kind of learn where some stuff is depending on the boss, and then you have to kind of go find it out or seek it out. I think a lot of it is just jump into the air because there's eagles that kind of take you around if you want. Jump into the air and see where everything is. Let me actually reverse real quick. So an expedition is basically the mission where you get to pick what the final boss is. So for the beta, we only got one. It was a 3-headed dog. And I'm thinking that every expedition that the game launches with, it'll show you the main boss that you're going to be fighting up the few days to get to. So we just had the one that you would play over and over again, just so people know what the way that the beta was set up. So it took some getting used to, like I said, is restarting every time. Basically the only thing that crosses over is you kind of can put little boons on your characters that you were playing. So if you beat it, you might get 2 or 3 little shards you can equip to your character in Round Table Hold. There's 3 characters, so there was 2 heavies. One of them was a sword and shield. He could roll, grapple hook. Another one was a falcon, kind of uses his wings to do, certain attacks. He could not roll, and he had an axe and a shield. The one that I liked the most was the rogue. So she had a dagger. She could double step really quick. She had a really cool, this is what stuck out to me the most. She had a really cool power where if you did a bunch of damage if you just did any damage at all, you could press the power button for it. I think it was Y and trigger on Xbox. And it would bring up a shade of the boss that took all the damage, and then the actual boss you're fighting will take all the damage that shade took the first time it took damage. So you're basically just double damaging the same way by your special power. So it's really useful if you did any what are those power moves when you kind of break their posture and you go up and attack them. I don't remember what those are called.
Poise.
Yeah, like a special poise attack. They're really useful for that, or if one of your persons had frost damage to an enemy that was very weak to frost damage, every time they got a really good attack in, you could use that power. The big thing for her, though, is that she was really, really weak, so you take 1-2 hits and you're done. But other than that, I thought she moved the best, she moved the quickest, and her powers were just so good. If her other power was invisibility, so if somebody was pressuring you too much, couldn't really get away from them, you pop on invisibility, let them go for your other teammates. They can kind of give you a minute to breathe, and you can get back in and attack. Last one real quick would be the mage. She was really good as well. Again, really easy to break down, but she had cool powers. When you take people's essences, you can kind of make a magical cocktail, and then it would just explode on them. It was really cool, dude. I think the thing I was the most surprised about is that I didn't have any server crashes. Load times were good. Everything looked and felt really smooth. You could always see where your characters were. There wasn't really any latency problems. It's just pretty hard because everything's kind of scaled up to 3 people. So if you know 2 of your teammates go down and you're using especially a character that doesn't have a whole lot of health, pretty hard, dude. You definitely need 1 to 2 heavies every single time you do a run through. Like I did one where it was me and 2 other rogues, so it was us playing the same player. We didn't make it very far because there wasn't anybody that could take any hits. You can only be perfect so many times. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I'm perfect every single time, but maybe that's me personally.
I'm just built different. I'm him.
I am him. I am the roll god himself. Never have parried an attack in my entire life in a Dark
That's
Souls
literally
game,
me.
but nobody rolls like me.
I am so good at rolling, and I think what is the most interesting thing about this game is the fact that you can jump the way that you jump, and the way that only really 1 or 2 characters can roll. The rest kind of just backstep or sidestep. So it takes a little bit of getting used to. It's very Sekiro, the way that those ones move. You kind of have to get used to that because rolling, it honestly, sometimes it makes more sense to roll into an enemy than to roll away from one. So getting used to, like, you cannot step into somebody, you're going to get whacked every single time. It took me a little bit of a time. But like I said, 500 hours into Elden Ring, you're kind of stuck in your ways. So I think for a lot of people who haven't played Elden Ring as much, I think they'll enjoy this game quite a bit. People who played, hours and hours, characters after characters, I think that they'll probably have a little bit harder time adjusting.
Yeah, I think that one of my biggest takeaways from watching a lot of the beta gameplay for it is not Elden Ring. It is a Souls-like game, but even though it's on the same engine as Elden Ring, I wouldn't really consider it to be Elden Ring, like not just because of the multiplayer and the roguelite elements, but just like overall the gameplay is very different. Like the pacing of the fights feels very different even.
Oh yeah, it's rush, 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 and compared to plan and attack. That's what Elden Ring was plan and attack. This is go as quick as you can, do as much as you can before you run out of time.
Right. I'm interested to see if when they do the full release of the game, if they add the option that most roguelite games have of looping. Because what most roguelite games, like when you reach the final boss, you have the option to start over with the same character, but all the enemies scale up, kind of how like New Game Plus is on Elden Ring.
Okay.
So like something like Risk of Rain, like you just decide kind of arbitrarily at some point when you want to fight the actual like final boss and end the run or die trying. Whereas this kind of has like a set destination and ending,
Yeah, when you're done with the second major boss, you get teleported to the final boss room.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see if they kind of keep up with their own formula that they seem to be working on, or if they make a move to kind of be more like a standard roguelite where you can go indefinitely if you really want to until you hit a wall, basically. Because like that's always one of my favorite things about that genre of games in general is that you hit a point and your character's just like so broken, but also so are the enemies, and the gameplay just starts to become really absurd and broken.
Well, I think the main thing that'll hold them back from that is that as of right now, there's a 15 level cap. That's probably for if you're playing alone, but as of right now, it only goes up to 15. I think the thing is that we just don't know enough. We got one little sliver of the game, and that when it comes out, I think a lot of those questions will be answered. My biggest concern is you're always going to play the same final boss when you do an expedition. Like I said, I did the one with the dogs. So no matter what you do when you do the dog expedition, the final boss will be those dogs. So if you get stuck with a few expeditions and they're the bosses you really didn't like from the main game, it's going to be kind of very frustrating. Like, they better launch with enough expeditions is my big thing, because you don't want to fall into like the Space Marine 2 trap where it's like you only have the 5 missions and then you just got to play them over and over and over again until they decide to make a new one. It's a pretty big map with a lot of mini bosses. I mean, you could tell they hand plucked where every boss was. So it's going to take them longer to make new expeditions. So hopefully it launches with enough. That's my biggest worry. I won't buy it until I know how many expeditions it launches with.
I think one thing that they will probably do, and this is only an assumption, an informed guess. I think there's a chance that some of the bosses might have different variants. Like if it's the three-headed dog, there might be a fire version, an ice version, a version that does like rot damage or whatever it may be that kind of maybe changes it slightly. Yeah, I mean it's a Souls-like game. It's going to be awful in that, and the capacity of its, you're gonna hate some of the stuff that happens. I mean, there's zero chance this game releases unless it's truly completely divorced from the Elden Ring and Dark Souls team if it doesn't have a poison swamp.
That's true. That's true. I'm sure there will be at least one of them. I think, I know, I get what you're saying. Hopefully there is variances for the main bosses, but I feel like the affinity, the attack affinity that bosses have is never really the problem with bosses people dislike. It's just the boss itself. Because you can always work your way around the certain affinities for bosses. Scarlet Rot, for instance, you have the Scarlet Puffballs, and those bosses really aren't that hard. You put on one of those like horns that give you like the boosted immunity. They're really not that hard. Same with the fire. Same with the... Not a whole lot for frost and snow. The sleep. Those ones are typically harder, but I think it's just, like I said, they better launch with enough expeditions because even though the game is cheap, you're going to lose a lot of people quickly because you got to have enough for them to do. And I know it's going to be semi-randomly generated depending on what, and that's why I'm hoping you're right about that, but I don't know. That's my only big worry. Also, like I said, I only thought two of the main characters were really all that. Maybe other people like three of them, but I definitely think that the Falcon is the one that's really lacking out of all of them.
Well, one thing is that they already established that when the game drops, there'll be 8 characters to choose from.
Oh, okay.
Each with their own abilities, looks, ultimates, and I think some of the like their own weapon options when it comes to getting rewards and trophies and stuff like that, or the different variants of the weapons and stuff like that. So I think that will give the game a lot of depth. I do think people will lean towards specific classes, like most games that they kind of have a personal affinity for, whether they like be a caster or they like the different variants. But I did see a lot of people complaining about the fact that it is not Elden Ring online on the different Elden Ring forums and pages, like on the Reddit and stuff. That like because we just got that huge DLC for Elden Ring pretty recently.
Yep.
It was last summer, I believe. And like that is Elden Ring. Like they're trying to do something different. So being mad that the game is different in that capacity is strange. Like you don't have to like all the differences. But it is weird that so many people on Reddit and stuff like that are just like so mad that the game is different.
Well, here's a quick aside, connected. So I don't want to move away from this, but here's something else I've seen. It's the same thing to where it's like everybody's complaining about Avowed because it's not Skyrim. It's like, well, it's a different game. In this Elden Ring, it's connected loosely by the lore. But other than that, I mean, it really is a different game. You could tell by the way that people move. The thing is with Souls games is they move a certain way, and when you move away from that, it feels like a different game. Sekiro was so wildly different from all the rest of the Souls games because he had the character moving in a completely different style, and it was parry based. These characters move differently, and people are going to dislike that. It takes a lot of getting used to. I wasn't a fan of it first. By the time that the first game was done, my fiance had changed her tune on it. She didn't know at first, and then by the end, she was like, I really like that. After I played a few more games, I was really into it too. I wasn't going into this expecting Elden Ring, but when you're looking at the graphics, which are Elden Ring, Round Table Hold is where you spawn, you definitely expect it to play a certain way, and then you have to get out of that habit. Once you get out of that habit, the game's amazing. But if you can't separate the two, then just don't buy it. Don't complain. We don't care. Just don't buy it. It's a different game.
It's even funny too because a lot of the people that are like that were super angry about it, especially in the Elden Ring Facebook page or whatever, were like so mad, and it's like you didn't even pay any money for this, bro. Like it was free to try it out, and like isn't that the best case scenario? You paid $0 for a game, and then you go, oh, I don't like it. Now I know I don't want to spend $40 on it. It's kind of
Exactly.
like the best case scenario. You just saved $40 and saved yourself from playing a bunch of a game you don't like to try to force yourself to like it. Like, why be mad? Just be like, oh, other people might enjoy this.
Not for me though.
But this is something that I did specifically want to bring up. The funniest complaint I saw that people were repeating was they didn't like the bird guy by virtue of him being a bird guy. And it's like, in Elden Ring, Blade is a dog guy, like a wolf guy.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine. Like, it's normal, it's reasonable for a wolfman. But Birdman is where I draw the line. Like, that is it. Like, I've completely destroyed my immersion. There's a bird guy. And it's like,
Well,
have you seen any of the bosses in freaking Elden Ring? Like, have you seen, there's everything. There's freaking pumpkin head guy. There's the giant snakes. There's all these screwed up mutants and everything, and like all of the ring bearers are just like so hideous, messed up.
And twisted, yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean, look
I
at
think that
frickin-
comes a lot back to people who never played Dark Souls. A lot of Elden Ring players, that is the only Souls game they've ever played. But they definitely have never played Dark Souls because a lot of the intelligent races in Dark Souls that give you really good material, really good early game stuff, they're all talking birds. One of the most important missions in Elden Ring for Nefeli Liu was getting like an eagle's feather. Like, they've always been very important in his storytelling. And also, that's literally the reason why I picked him. He's awesome. He's a falcon that wears armor. How is that not cool? That doesn't make any sense to me.
I do get sort of a sick joy over watching people get really angry over something that they could just choose not to engage with.
It's not.
I'm not gonna lie.
It's not hard.
It is an endless source of comedy for me a little bit.
It was, but now it just gets really old. Like, a lot of people, because I haven't seen a whole lot about the Elden Ring stuff, but like I said, I've also been avoiding it because I like to go into games I know I'm going to like with a completely clean slate without all of those losers ruining it for me. But, like, so many people have not played Avowed and all they do is talk bad about it. And it's like, you literally haven't played it. Like, you're hating something that you have not experienced. What are you doing? I don't understand that.
Yeah, I think that there is an element of people just kind of end up hate bandwagoning on things a bit, where like they see so many people don't like it and they kind of just determine they don't like it before they even give it a try.
Yes.
And it's, I don't know. I also feel like there is more, some people feel like there's a lot more to talk about disregarding things than there is to give things like praise where it's due. And, you know, like, pretty much every video game has some sort of issue or something that could be better about it. But that doesn't mean it's not good, you know?
Well, this podcast is a great example of, like, how much time do we spend about stuff that we don't like? Well, we got 5 minutes out of Metallica and My Chemical Romance, but how many hours have we talked about the stuff that we actually enjoy? I literally don't want to talk about stuff I don't like. I do not want to. I want to talk about stuff that I like. I don't understand, like, that sick, twisted enjoyment. Like, another stuff that I've seen, because I haven't played Avowed and Hunter hasn't either, but, like, just talking about, like, the way that people act. I've seen a lot of people in the comments about Avowed stuff, like good reviews or people talking about it. And they'll be like, why would I play that garbage when I have Kingdom Come? And it's like, that they're literally not even in the same genre. Like, what is that? What does those two things have to do? Keep it to yourself and shut up. I don't understand it.
It reminds me of the age-old internet concept of, like, when someone's like, I like pancakes, and they're like, oh, so you hate waffles.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's not even close to what I said. Like, you just made up a thing and got mad about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can enjoy Kingdom Come, and you could enjoy Avowed, and you can enjoy different things about those different games even. I would say that one of my favorite things about playing lots of different genres of games is that they're different. You know, if all these games were very similar, like if every RPG forever now was a Skyrim clone because Skyrim was one of the most well-received RPGs of all time, everyone would start to hate them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's, to me, I think a great example of this is, I will say it again, the Far Cry formula. Like, that people loved that at first, and then it was so overdone and so beat to death, where every game is freaking that Far Cry, Assassin's Creed type of open world formula, where now it's horrible and a lot of people cannot stand it.
Yeah, absolutely. I
It's
think
like
trends is never really trending games are never really good to like emulate because it's like you should just make the game you want. And odds are if you love what you're making, other people will like it as well. Can it be similar to other games? Sure. But you need to make the game that you want. Don't just follow what's popular.
that's what I love about the Dark Souls genre is they make these games for people who like Souls-like games. They don't make these games for FPS fans. They don't make these games for people who really like a game where you just press one button over and over again and you get to beat all the fights or whatever. They don't make these games for people who like super detailed kind of spoon-fed stories. They give you ones that you have to kind of piece together and understand, and like there is world building, but it's not just handed to you, and you have to figure out things, and like it's made for people who like that sort of thing. And if you don't like that, there's nothing wrong with that, but you can choose not to engage with it if you don't want to.
One of my favorite things about Souls games and what's his name, Miyazaki or whatever. Miyazaki. My favorite thing about him is like if something can be cheesed, he'll typically like fix it immediately. Like he'll be like, I'm not gonna make this game easier for you, and he'll make it harder on purpose. I love that. Like literally, like make it because he's somebody, and there are a lot of game developers like this. The people who make Kingdom Come are a good one. Like a lot of people, like they have a specific vision in mind, and if something got through the grate before it shipped, and it's not the way that they intended, they'll go through and patch it to make it even harder if they have to, because like that's the way that they wanted it. And I like that. We've talked about it a million times. I'll beat it over the head again. People who are passionate about what they're doing, it's always going to be better. Even if it's harder, it's always going to be better.
Absolutely. I think that I think Elden Ring, again, is a great example of kind of where they went right with this. Is like, it is by far the most popular Souls-like game, you know? Or it's like the most popular of the Souls genre, you know, and part of it was they stayed true to what they wanted the game to be while expanding and making it even bigger and more open world than the previous Souls games.
Yeah,
and people loved it. Like they went crazy for it, even though that genre wasn't necessarily like couldn't typically compete with something like Call of Duty. Or couldn't compete with like easier RPGs like Skyrim, and then Elden Ring still blew a lot of the games that it was released alongside of out of the water, despite being difficult and kind of out there.
I would say Elden Ring is one of the hardest ones that he has made. Like I would say it's harder than most Dark Souls games, personally.
I think that's definitely true if you don't cheese things. Speaking of that, because like I do think that Elden Ring of most of the games, it's easier to figure out kind of ways to cheese them like with the equipment because it's such a deep pool of equipment in the game. But if you choose not to do that and play the game kind of like honestly and like for the challenge of it, I do think it's one of the hardest ones.
Yeah, I get that, but like I just played Dark Souls 1 and 2 early last year, and it's like there's ways to literally just let a boss fall off of the boss ring, like the area. And then they just die, and they're like, hey guys, this cheese is still in the game if you want to do it. Elden Ring is not like that. Like, everything is fine-tuned. Like you said, like, there is definitely equipment that can make boss fights easy, but that's also kind of the point. Like, if you're paying enough attention, you lose a few times, and you're like, oh, I got a weapon that he's weak against. That's more so rewarding you for actually trying to figure out what people are weak against. Like how, I didn't even know this until I played the DLC that came out during the summer, I think Shadow of the Erdtree. If you have a holy weapon, every single dead enemy, they just immediately get milked. Like, all of those dead bird dragons, if you walk up to them with a holy weapon, doesn't even have to be all the way leveled up. You hit them a few times, and their bar just melts. And it's like, if you look into these things, he gives you rewards for actually trying to learn the game. Compared to earlier games like Dark Souls 1 and 2, where it's like, you could just walk them over to the edge and then let them fall off.
Which is still kind of awesome. Just because it's hilarious.
No, I get what you mean, but like, I'm definitely in your same vein. It's like, there's definitely ways to make these sort of games easier, but I think the reward for learning every aspect of a game will always make the game better. Like, when I just got done playing Skyrim this time around, I never delved into like the magic system or the stealth system too much because I always found them boring. But I had to play with the game almost on the maximum difficulty once I started doing that because it's like you get your smithing up and then you do some of these other things and the game's just easier. But it's like these are also parts of the games where it's like you actually have to like learn how to do it. So I like that reward system. It makes the game way more enjoyable for somebody who just wants to ease their way through it and also somebody who doesn't. I like that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's a good thing, but I more so just meant like if you want Elden Ring to be easier, you can have it be easier than if you kind of just approach the entire game like just kind of like go boss to boss to boss, you know what I mean? It could be a very, very hard, incredibly hard game.
Very
versus
much so.
if you want it to be easier, you can get that. But that's kind of what makes a lot of these open world games cool that are in depth like this is that you can approach them in whatever way you see fit for how you want to play the game.
Yeah, because the way I like to play it is I like to do every dungeon over again. I know I've done them 12 times, but I like to do every single dungeon, every cave over and over again. If you clear an area before you do the boss is typically easy. But a lot of people, they like to do some of the stuff in the area, maybe get a new weapon or two, and then they just like to go towards the boss. And that's a good way to do it. Like our friend Ryan. He's the one that's been giving me and Hunter a lot of Avowed news. But like our friend Ryan, when he started playing, he's like, I'm going to do a no summons run. And I'm like, well, good luck. That's going to be rough. But it's like, that's the thing. It's like, there are definitely ways to make the game easier and funner for some people who like it on a little bit more of the easy side. But then for people like him, where it's like they want to go through the pain of beating the boss just themselves, like that's how it's a very varied, like you said, just so varied to reach such a wide audience, and that's why it succeeded. And I think this new one, Elden Nightreign, looping back to that, if there's going to be 8 playable characters as it starts, there is going to be one for probably almost anybody who would be interested in buying the game. That is such great news to get.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'll be cool, and I think that there will be a couple of them that are definitely going to be very strange just by nature of Dark Souls that will be very niche and very cool.
Those are the best ones.
Definitely agree with that.
So
go ahead. My biggest hope for the 8 characters is a consistent problem I've had in a lot of roguelike games is that some of the characters are just so much better tuned to what the gameplay is than other ones. So I do hope that each character has at least some niche that they can occupy and really excel at, and it doesn't feel like some of the characters are just tuned better than the other ones for the missions.
I think you're probably right that especially in the beginning that might be more probable than not, especially because we only tested 4, so only 4 are really going to get fine-tuned. But there will definitely be at least one character that is supposed to be hard for the sake of being hard. You know, like when you play Elden Ring and you play a Wretch, or people who play the never level up runs of the game. Like, there will be at least one that is useless in every aspect so that people can have a really good challenge. But yeah, like you're saying, I hope it's not half of them, which is a high possibility, I think, in the beginning.
Yeah, it's definitely not impossible. There's, I'm speaking to Risk of Rain 2. If anyone in the audience has played that before, there's a couple characters that their kit is super unique and interesting, speaking to like Artificer and Chef and stuff like that, but they're just not particularly good compared to stuff like Captain, where it's just sometimes characters in these games kind of end up feeling like they were very much designed to do exactly what you want to do in these games. And then other ones are kind of just like, they just slap some really cool abilities together and don't really think about the implications of how they come together.
Yeah, that's fair. I get that. I think, especially if there is like a power they really want to include, but then every other main solid character has one, sometimes they'll just make another one and throw that power on it, and then that's usually the least used one. Like in Space Marine, there was some pretty good skills that you could get as you leveled up, but compared to the ones that just make sense to make quality of life when you're on like the harder difficulties, those rarely ever got picked because it's like they're awesome and they could be useful. But you know what's way more useful? Being able to pick yourself up, having that extra mag of ammo, doing stuff like that, making sure your friend's ability comes back quicker. Like, there are certain stuff that it's like it just makes more sense in the game, even though the other ones could be cool, they just get picked less.
Yeah, definitely. I I have a tendency to just like go for things that are very cool in these type of games, and sometimes I like the challenge that gives can be very fun, and then other times it can just be a bit frustrating when it feels like someone is trying significantly less hard and getting way better results,
Yeah.
can be a
Yeah.
bit frustrating. And it's like I don't mind it being more difficult, but I think it's fun when things that are more difficult are rewarding because like the skill ceiling is very high.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that goes to like the Elden Ring, not like a roguelike, but like an Elden Ring or a Souls or the new Nightreign. The mages, I'm going to be honest, the magic system in Elden Ring is pretty confusing and kind of hard to get down, but once you do bonkers damage. So it's like
Right.
you have to learn how to do it to do good. But when you have a character that has a high learning ceiling and you're not getting those the gangbusters DPS, it's like, well, why am I doing this?
Yeah, exactly that. Like I tend to I can get bored easy of characters that are generic and just powerful. So I tend to in
Same.
pretty much any game gravitate towards characters that are weird and require very specific game knowledge and stuff like that. I just am that kind of person that I like that type of almost bookkeeping and those deep dives into why would you play this character? Like what makes them so good or so interesting
Yeah.
or whatever. So when they have those characters in the game and they just aren't as rewarding as their very generic characters, it's tough, It's tough because then they just have no sell at all.
Yeah. No, for sure.
So I'm really hoping that they have some interesting characters that have a ton of depth in that way, which I think that they hopefully will, because I think that Elden Ring did a pretty good job of creating a lot of depth in the characters and the way you play them.
Yeah, I think you're right, because especially in like that case, most of like the amazing weapons you get from bosses are very good, but like also something as simple as a wooden club in Elden Ring is one of the most powerful weapons in the game. Like, they're able to kind of balance across the spectrum really well. But also, like I said, a lot of that does come with time. You remember how hard some of those bosses were when the game first came out. Me and you were like pulling our hair out on some of these bosses. And then they ended up nerfing them or making them more balanced. Not making it easier per se, but making you more balanced for where you should be. Like stuff like that. Like, I think the game won't be laggy, unplayable, whatever else the losers like to call it when it drops. But I definitely think that it's like once you start letting everybody tinker with the system, there will need to be rebalances. And then the game will be a lot better a few weeks after people get their hands on it than when it first comes out. That's just how it is when you're playing a class-based game. That's just how it goes.
Yeah, that definitely. Especially just no matter how much you test a game with however big your testing team could possibly be, once you just like let it go for people to put millions of combined hours into a game or whatever, like you're gonna find out what's good and what's bad for sure.
Yeah, especially because your development team is probably similar of mine. You're all there because you want, well, in the case of like the Elden Ring studio, Kingdom Come, Avowed, these are people that want to be there and make this sort of game. Obsidian, I mean, they want to make these games. They're super excited to be a part of these specific games because they like these companies. But they all are probably going to think similarly because they're all on the same page. Once you get the ass clowns like me and you playing with the game and we're like, oh, I've done that a million times, why don't I use this? And you're like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like, they might not have looked at it from that standpoint, especially because some of these studios are in different parts of the world and their biggest player base is America. So it's like when you're just thinking completely differently in the way you approach games. It's great because, like I said, the game's going to be incredible a few weeks after it comes out, but like, these people are only human. They're only human. You can only do so much with what you got.
See, that's the problem. We need to replace them with super efficient robot. No, I'm just kidding.
Come on, Musk. Hook us up.
Oh man.
All right, so real quick before we move on from that, the release date for Nightreign is May 30th. So anybody who's interested, keep an eye out. It'll be out at the end of May.
And reach out to us as always if you want to maybe even play some Nightreign with us. Let us know.
I'd be down for that. Hunter can't play with me because he hates me, but people on PC can play with Hunter. People on Xbox can play with me. It's definitely, we'll do game nights for sure, especially as we get more of you guys listening and following and, wanting to actually work with us. Like, we would definitely be down for that. We want to do more of that in the future. It's just, we're figuring stuff out now between the wedding, Hunter's new job, stuff like that. But it's on the horizon for sure.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you, Hunter.
All right.
Have you watched Rebel Moon?
No, I don't think so.
It's the show on Netflix by Zack Snyder. They made a big deal of it when it first came out. Part 1 came out, and then a few years later, Part 2 came out.
I feel like I started the first one, but did not even finish it, to be honest with you.
Well, I understand why, and we'll get to that. So I wanted to actually do it because Zack Snyder came out with his director's cut. So Part 1 and Part 2 were about 2 hours each. Now they're about 6 hours, 6.5 hours combined. So 4 hours to 6.5 hours. That's about 2 hours extra footage in the movie. So I'm like, this is the time to watch them. So I started it, and I'm like, oh, this looks nice. The CGI, there's too much CGI, but it still looks really good. Like, better than Marvel levels of CGI. It looks really clean, looks really nice. I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, this is cool. And then I get to the point where I'm like, oh, this is literally Warhammer mixed with the Star Wars storyline. So if you take out the Space Marines from Warhammer, they're the bad guys, like the Imperium is the bad guys, and then the Rebels are the Star Wars aspect. And I don't want to really compare the two, but like, it literally is like watching what I assume a Warhammer would movie be if it was written by like a Star Wars director. Like it's they even have lightsabers. Is a good way to like give you an idea of what I mean. And all of the military is in Latin. Like kind of how the Imperium is. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I just I don't feel like the characters are all too interesting, and I feel like if you're watching 6.5 hours of a movie, you kind of want them to be more interesting than they are. But I wanted to talk to you about that because it's basically Warhammer mixed with Star Wars.
Yeah, maybe I'll give it another shot sometime. But I don't... It was a while ago when the first one came out, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think 2019 maybe.
Because I feel like I gave it a shot and just like could not get into it and ended up watching something else. No, it looks like the first one might have came out in 23.
Really? I thought it came out when I was in college. Oh, that might be the director's cut.
It says December 15th, 2023, following a limited theatrical release on December 15th, 2023. Rebel Moon was released by Netflix on December 22nd.
Oh, damn, that's embarrassing. All right, well, I'm going to cut out the the Dune part.
I think we should leave it. I'm just kidding.
Okay, so yeah, it came out a little, a year ago or so, 2 years ago now-ish. But no, it's, I could understand why you would. I mean, the beginning of the movie's kind of boring. I mean, they go from a world getting obliterated without giving you any idea of any of the characters to a farm, and you're just on the farm for an hour without anything really going on. So it makes a little bit of sense. I guess it's a book. Yeah. So I bet you the original movies didn't do the books justice. Probably everything was kind of just thrown together without any real depth. The director's cuts, I feel like, maybe fix that. I feel like I'm getting a little bit more depth now. But like I said, the characters just really aren't that interesting is my big problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, compared to, like, Dune Part 2, which I think is, like, one of the best sci-fi releases in the last decade or two, it didn't really grab me.
Yeah,
Which is tough because I was actually excited about it, but it did just feel pretty slow to start.
I am 3 hours into Part 1, and I am also, like, I feel like it's just now starting to get going. And that's probably because it's one movie. It's a 6.5 hour movie that's cut in half. So it's like there's a lot of setup. But the setup is usually to make you care about the characters. Like the ordeal I get. Like the whole ordeal of we have to save our community from the Imperium. Who cannot get behind that? I get that. But if you're going to set up for 3 hours and... Okay, so there's only one character that's good I really like, and it's a robot. And he's the only one that has any real depth. And it's because he was there when all of, like, the main Imperium stuff was going on. I guess the princess died, and he was a servant to the princess. So it's like you're getting more from a side
R2-D2.
character. What's that?
So literally R2-D2. You just described R2-D2 exactly.
Oh, yeah. Dude, I didn't even put those two together, but yes.
Right on down to when the princess died. He was there for the old Imperium.
Dude, I can't even believe I didn't even notice that. But yes, it's literally it. He's literally... Yeah, exactly, dude. But, like, this character that has had 3-4 minutes... No, I'd say if maybe 8 to 9 minutes of the entire screen time is significantly more interesting than any of the characters you spent 3 hours with.
Yeah, I have a hard time with that sort of thing because no matter how good the theme of your media is, no matter how good the ideas are behind it, like, you need convincing characters because humans don't relate to themes in the same level that they relate to characters. So your characters need to be the vessel for your message, the vessel for your theme. So if you just have a really good theme and a really good idea, but you don't have compelling characters, you don't have a good story, I feel like.
Yeah, I can buy into that for sure. Like, the main character is kind of like a Han Solo person. She worked in, like in the Imperium, like kind of how Han Solo was like a smuggler for like the Hutts and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Who's kind of turning good, trying to fix stuff, wants to actually like make a difference because they had a change of heart or whatever. But it's like, even like her driving force is like not really that. So her whole family got murdered, and then the richest, most powerful general adopted her. So it's like, oh, okay, she grew up in poverty. Oh, wait, okay, now she lives in a giant castle that's the size of a continent. Like, you automatically cannot relate to a character that probably had the most relatable beginning. So it's like, it's just super crazy. Oh, another guy is a prince. Another guy is a revolutionary leader. It's like, these are all people you cannot relate to.
I don't know. I'm personally a revolutionary leader and a prince in my day-to-day life, but...
You're definitely a king, but I haven't heard of any revolution you started yet.
It's a silent one so far.
Okay, I can't believe I wasn't invited. Anyways, last episode of the podcast, guys. See you later.
All right, see you guys later. Good one.
But yeah, I just wanted to talk to you about it because I didn't know if you had seen it. If you feel like giving it some, even maybe just put it on in the background while you do stuff because you're not really going to miss a whole lot. I'd like to get your impressions of it because I would like to talk to see if maybe I'm being hard on it. Personally, I like the Warhammer aspects. I like the Star Wars aspects. But like you said, I mean, if you can't relate to the people, you don't really care about the people, the story's just not there. I'm probably going to finish it just so I can talk more about it. So next week, I'll have a final review of everything.
Okay, yeah, I'll try to at least maybe watch a little bit more of the first one. This is sort of a segue, but related. Have you watched the Rings of Power, Lord of the Rings show?
I have not.
Well, that is a one that also, in my opinion, has an incredibly slow start. But by the end of the second season of the show, it is absolutely incredible. It was one I was super happy I stuck with because the first, I feel like 3-ish episodes, I was just like, oh my god. Like, it was really dragging. It was hard. It was a little bit hard for me to get through. I was invested mostly because of the characters I liked, even though it was slow. And then it ended up, really they pulled it together because you cared about the characters. They were able to build to such big cinematic moments, but that was kind of similar to how the Rebel Moon, the start of it was just very, very slow, but I felt like if you're not selling the characters in those slow parts, then like what are you even doing?
Yeah, that's how I think House of the Dragon was able to keep me, is they made the characters so interesting to me that even though nothing really kind of happened almost the entire show, it was always very interesting and captivating.
Yeah, I get that. Like, you can get away with a lot if you have likable characters. You can
For
get
sure.
away with a lot of exposition, especially if like you have an idea of what's coming. You have kind of a concept of the action that is to come, but the characters are being sold to you, so you really care more about the action. Because kind of on the other end of that, like the climax is only as good as the exposition. You know, like if the movie's all Michael Bay explosions, everything's flipping around and everything. Like if it doesn't really mean that much. It could be cool visually, but at that point, it's more like you're kind of just like there for the visuals and not the story.
Right. And a lot of people aren't able to continuously be successful like him doing that.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, a lot of Marvel's downfall nowadays is most people don't care about these characters. All this stuff's exploding. One, it looks not that good because it's Marvel. Two, it's like nobody really cares about a lot of these characters, so that's why they're not doing as well. They're keeping the same formula without having the charming characters to back it up.
Yeah, and the triple A actors who everyone is absolutely in love with,
Yeah.
who are playing these characters that like you can kind of scrape by with a repetitive formula as long as you have these charming and interesting characters who can really sell these characters, even though all of the Avengers like origin stories feel very much the same.
Yeah, definitely. I can buy into that for sure.
Yeah. That's honestly kind of what lost me the most about a lot of the Marvel movies is that almost every single one of their origin stories feels like they're just rehatching the exact same character with a different skin pack a little bit.
That's why I like the Robert Pattinson Batman so much. Is one, they didn't even really talk about the origin story too much. And the little bit of hints they did, I mean, sort of the same, but also not really. Like, he's a younger, grittier, more hateful Batman, and that starts almost immediately. I like that. Like, I wanted it to be different or skip it completely. And this, like, that Batman almost completely skips it.
Yeah, I happen to
like
think
that.
that movie's incredible. That's actually
It's my favorite Batman.
It's very, very good. And also the Penguin in that movie is a 10 out of 10.
Oh, yeah. I still need to watch that TV show. I have not watched it yet.
Yeah, that just incredible. Like, you know, they've really made you I feel like his portrayal of that character was on par with like this might be sacrilegious to some people, like the Heath Ledger Joker, like in the sense of just like that's who I think of now. And I was a huge fan of the Danny DeVito Penguin because
Yeah, me too.
people may not know, I am one of the biggest Danny DeVito fans in the world.
He is a king.
But I thought he was incredible in that role. But I still feel like the Penguin was pretty incredible in that. What is the actual title of that Batman movie?
The Batman.
Okay, that's embarrassing. I'm actually gonna end the podcast now.
No,
Yeah,
I'm in that same vein. Like, he acts very similar to the Penguin from the Gotham TV show. But the thing is that they didn't have a guy that embodied him as well. Like, he acts exactly the same. He's got the same vibe, but he doesn't look like the Penguin like the guy from the Batman does or the Penguin TV show on HBO. You know what? I will try to, when I'm done with Rebel Moon, I will try to watch that so that we can maybe talk a little bit more. Did you watch that show?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, I'll try to get that knocked out before our next podcast, and then we can talk about it.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. And I couldn't think of what his name is. Colin Farrell does an amazing job as the Penguin. Just really sells it. And I also, speaking to the Batman movie as well, the Riddler was a great choice for a villain in that one. I'm so glad. I'm a huge fan of the Joker, but I'm also he's starting to feel a little bit Marvel, where it just feels so overdone at this point. Like, there's a lot of really great villains in the Batman universe. Like, we don't have to keep doing only the Joker.
Yeah, I think the Riddler, I like that they kind of changed it a little bit. I like the route that they went with him.
They made it more modern.
What's that?
I feel like they made it more modern. Like,
they made him more human too. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I don't know. The spandex outfit and the top hat and the cane with the question mark on it feels pretty human to me personally.
It's pretty unhinged, if you ask me. I don't know how I feel about it. But
that's how I'm rolling up to your bachelor party, but
oh, hell yeah. As long as you're doing it. Oh, so this is the revolution we were talking about. Okay, now I get it.
Yeah, it's a lot of green spandex and question marks. Um, yeah, join our live next week. I'm just kidding.
Oh my god. Yeah, I'm pretty excited to see where they go with that. I think that is relatively current news as well, since we're talking about the Penguin show. It's been on for a little while, but Robert Pattinson, which is one of my favorite actors, he did say that they will start shooting the next Batman soon. And also on the topic of Robert Pattinson, he's got a movie coming out in a few weeks. It's called Mickey 17. I would really urge everybody to watch the trailer and maybe consider going and seeing it. Me and Jess are going to go see it the week it comes out because, one, he barely ever lets me down. Every single movie he's in, I absolutely love. I'm a huge Twilight fan. Don't judge me. And, The Lighthouse, The Batman, a lot of the other movies that he's just kind of been in. I really like him as an actor. And this movie seems in the vein of the more weirder movies he makes, but not really like a niche studio. A little bit more big budget, a little bit more of him being like the aspects I like about him as an actor. I feel like he's able to lean into a little bit more compared to the Batman, which was very. You could tell that there was a specific way he had to be in that one. This movie seems like he can. So Mickey 17, I don't know if anybody knows. It's like he's cloned. And he's cloned to do deadly jobs, and he keeps dying. So every time he dies, he comes back. So he's going to be able to embody different types of personalities, I think, that will lean into him very well. So Mickey 17 is the movie. Try to check it out, guys. Maybe leave a comment if you do. I'm definitely going to go see it, and you guys will be hearing my review as soon as I do.
I am personally not a Twilight fan, but
Love it.
I feel like Robert Pattinson is pretty incredible outside of that. I feel like a lot of people don't like him because I personally didn't like those movies. There's nothing wrong with liking them, except for I'm right, you're wrong. But besides that,
right,
I feel like a lot of
Great show,
people
peace.
only. I feel like a lot of people just kind of like put him in that spot, and they only see him in like as a Twilight character or an actor or whatever. But he is. Like The Lighthouse is an incredible movie. If you haven't seen that one, I highly recommend it.
I also love William Dafoe too, so it's a double win for me.
Oh yeah, I'm in love with that man. He's
good.
incredible. He's pretty much amazing in everything he is in. I like him, and he's always in stuff with Robert Eggers or that Robert Eggers directs. Like he was so good in Nosferatu, so good in The Northman. Just everything he does, he very authentically does what he wants to do with that character and it really sells it no matter who they are. If it's something that's kind of funny or if it's really serious or it's horror or whatever it is, he really sells it. But I feel like even if you don't like Robert Pattinson, I'd give him a chance in some of this stuff, especially the Batman. I plan on seeing this. That's actually funny that you brought it up because that was the next thing I had on my note sheet here was to bring up was actually Mickey 17 and wanted to ask you about it. So that one I will definitely be seeing soon. I saw a couple commercials for it and was super hyped up. And just the fact that it's a science fiction comedy is definitely right up my alley.
Same, dude.
So
I'm totally into that. I know I still need to see Tenet because I know he's in Tenet. I haven't seen it, but that's probably on my list of the movies I'm going to see soon, so that I can definitely want to get hyped up for Mickey 17. Like I literally, there's rarely actors where I enjoy everything that they're in, and I feel like he's one of them. So I bet you it's gonna be a good movie.
Yeah, I'm hyped for it. We'll definitely. Did you say what the release date was?
I'll get you an answer. I think it's like March 14th or something like that. March 7th.
March 7th. Okay, yeah, I will definitely be seeing that one. Probably the week it comes out, so we will definitely be talking about that one on the podcast.
Let me see. I think I've heard of the director before. I think he's a South Korean director. Pretty sure I've heard of this guy. Oh yeah, he made Parasite.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's another great movie too.
Yeah, so I've only ever seen it in passing. I've never actually sat down and watched the whole movie. I know I need to. It came out during the time frame where I wasn't watching movies, so I need to. But I knew his name. I knew his name.
You would like that one a lot. I would go back and watch it for sure. But it's definitely one that you have to be pretty active to fully absorb. I feel like
It's on
pretty
Netflix,
actively watching it. So
I'll add it to my list and I'll watch it literally as soon as I'm done with Rebel Moon. I'll watch it actually. So that's my homework for the next week is try to watch as much Penguin as I can. So yep, I will watch Parasite and I will watch the Penguin, and then we could talk more about that next week. So actually, the last thing I wanted to talk about was just a follow up on what we kind of covered a little bit last week. So do you remember when I was telling you that story about the author of the books that made the podcast I was listening to about writing?
Yes.
So Brandon Sanderson made the Stormlight Archives and damn, I can't remember his other books. But anyways, we talked about him last week. So I finally started the Stormlight Archives. I got through the prelude, the prologue, and the first few chapters. And it's pretty heavy, if I'm being honest with you. A lot of lore building off the bat. You kind of have to learn the magic system right away as well. You kind of get a little bit of the lore about the gods that, I guess they're living gods, kind of like Elder Scrolls, Morrowind, how those people who run Morrowind were living gods. He kind of touches on that a little bit. Really heavy, completely fictional, so you have to kind of learn the different races, the differences in the class structure. If you're into lore, I think it would be very enjoyable. Like, I was eating it up. I thought it was really cool. A little bit of it was confusing, so I had to like rewind a few times to really kind of absorb it all. But I'm a few hours into that, and I will keep you updated as I go through them. Hopefully I can have a good chunk, and maybe I'll try to have half the book done by the next time we talk so that I can really give you a deep dive into what I'm thinking. But I just wanted to update people. I know I talked about last week I was going to be starting it. I did start it today, luckily. So I'm a few hours in, and if you're into lore, you definitely need to check this book out. Very dialogue heavy. So if you like The Witcher, or you like A Song of Ice and Fire books, and I can't remember which Lord of the Rings book had all that dialogue. I think it was number 2. Was number 2 the one with Treebeard, or was that number 1?
I think 2.
Okay, yeah, the second Lord of the Rings book, where it's like almost the entire book is singing and dialogue. If you're into very dialogue heavy books, I think you should definitely check this out. Personally, my favorite writing styles, doesn't matter the genre, even though I do tend to stick to fantasy and science fiction because they tend to be bigger books, but like even horror and all that stuff. My favorite type of writing is dialogue heavy. Like when I'm listening to it when I'm listening or reading dialogue, I want to feel like I'm there and I'm listening to a conversation, a fight, an argument. Halo is very lackluster on dialogue, I feel like sometimes. So that's probably my biggest separation from the dialogue heavy. But if you're into like The Witcher, where sometimes it's just an hour straight of dialogue, I think this book would be for you. So my recommendation for today is definitely check out the Stormlight Archive if you guys have not read them. I think it's gonna quickly rise up to one of my favorite series.
I've heard a lot of good things about it, to be honest. I know a couple people who have obsessively like read all of the books by that author.
They're heavy.
I've heard a lot of good things about it. So I personally have not, but I definitely am on the hunt for some new audiobooks, so I may have to look into that too.
Well, all of his books, like if you wanted to listen to them instead of read them like I do, since I'm a truck driver and I have a lot of free time to do that, it's like 300 and something hours for the 5 books and the 2 novellas. So you want to have something that you can dig your teeth into for a while, definitely give that a good shot because it's definitely heavy. Like I said, you need a little bit of patience so you can learn all the systems, but I bet you $20 once you do, it'll pay off and that all the rest of the dialogue will be a lot more smoother. But I'm not sure the type of books you like, but like I said, dialogue heavy is my thing.
Last year I got through all 6 of the Dune books, so I think I could manage.
Oh, yeah, true. I've heard about those. I haven't approached them yet, but they're next on my list after Stormlight.
You know, the last thing I will touch on, kind of circling back to something we talked about earlier, the original Dune book is another example of something that has so much exposition, it is almost hard to get through, but the payoff is like a million times over worth it, so definitely worth checking out. There's the first 100 pages is a bit of a trudge if you don't like the kind of world building, character building kind of stuff, and you want more action or whatever. But I really enjoyed it.
Sounds like a wet dream for me. If I'm being honest with you, dude. I mean, I love that. Like when I'm listening to the Halo books, because those are what I've been diving into. I think since we started publishing the podcast a few weeks ago, I've gone through 4. So when they're just going in about like the armaments on the ships, or the differences in the weapons, or the upgrades they made to the armor, in just hearing like the internal monologue of what they're talking about, or like the specifics on it, like the very science fiction-y aspect of it, like kind of how in fantasy when they go really into like the old tales of the old gods and stuff like that, or setting up like what wars you'll never see, like the wars of old or the wars in different countries. Like when they do that and it's just like a binge on that sort of stuff, I love that, man. Like that, a lot of people just like the conflict of a book, which I think is why like a lot of people like the romance or the horror. Is like you get in, you learn some character, you get to the heat of it, and then you end it. But I like a slow burn because like if I'm gonna put my time into it, I kind of want to get attached to it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, then you will love Dune, and I can't wait to talk about the Dune books at some point in this podcast too, because you love Anakin Skywalker, you will love Paul Atreides. Holy cow!
Is that the main character?
Yeah.
Hell yeah! Isn't
Well,
he
that's the main character
just in
of
the
first 2 books?
Yeah, I was gonna say the first 2, and then the next ones are his descendants, right?
Yes, basically. He's not even necessarily the main character of the second book. It's primarily the first one, but it's a bit complicated, to be honest. So, and I don't want to spoil anything, but yes and no. He's sort of in all of the books and sort of not. But
okay, no, I get that completely. Like, yeah, I definitely can understand that. So I'll make you a promise right now. So I have to uphold it for everybody listening. As soon as I'm done with Stormlight Archive, I will start the Dune books.
So sometime around this time next year, he will be ready. I'm just kidding.
I think you underestimate my power, young one. Because I went through all of the Game of Thrones books, which I'd say is probably about 200 hours. I went through all of them in like a month and a half last year. I work 10 hours a day. So it's like it's easy to get a book done, almost a book a week.
Yeah, that is what I miss about when I used to work like a second shift / third shift job, was getting to just like hammer through all these audiobooks that are in my freaking backlog on Audible.
Hell yeah.
That is one of the advantages of that type of job for sure.
Yeah, I am up for a promotion right now, and if it does happen, I feel like it will be significantly harder for me to do that. So hopefully I can get through all the main books I want to, or at least a majority of them, so that the time that I can listen to them, I can focus on just listening to them. I also could listen to them at home more, but I choose not to because I like being able just to lose myself completely and not have to worry about like, you're doing dishes or you're folding laundry and then you miss something because you don't know where something goes. Like I don't want that to happen.
I'm just laughing a little bit at the fact that you drive a truck and you're like, I don't want to fold the laundry wrong, but I'm going to listen to the audiobook when I'm driving a truck.
Well, when you do something enough, it's second nature. You're able to disconnect and do something almost on autopilot.
No, that's fair. That's just, it's just kind of killing me right now.
Don't you fucking judge me. But you got to think I have like over, a million miles under my belt. A lot of that stuff's just second nature.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair. I believe you. It just hit my ear very funny as well.
No, I get it. I've also considered it because, I might have to cut this out. But I was driving the other day and I was like, okay, well, make sure you get that one exit. And then I just like teleported because I was into my book so much. I just like teleported down the highway and I was like, I missed my exit like 10 minutes ago. Because I was just so into my book, dude. Yeah.
I get that. I used to, when I was driving back and forth between Bailey's and my house, I would listen to a lot of audiobooks and got through quite a few of the Warhammer ones. I liked a lot doing that as well. So it definitely makes those long drives a lot more manageable.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's where I'm at is with my places. Like, I'm out of my truck a decent amount. I help load trucks. I do paperwork. I do all that sort of stuff. But like, I mean, a lot of it is like 75% of my job is just driving, and it's like even if you're just sitting in a dock waiting to get loaded, you're making sure you're getting the right stuff and whatnot. You can kind of just look and be like, oh yeah, this is my part because it's got your name on it. But you could still be listening to your book and giving it almost full attention. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just a lot of time where I can hammer it out. Also, the gym, too. Because if you think about it, I'm gone 12 hours a day. 2 of those hours are at the gym. That's also good time for a book because you don't want to sit there focused too much on what you're doing because, going to the gym sucks. I'd rather be doing something that I like, and then it makes the thing I don't like significantly more fun.
Definitely.
Yeah. But, all right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. And, like I said, if you guys have any comments, any questions about anything we talked about today, feel free to email, leave a comment. We're always happy to engage. Do you have anything else to close us out with, brother?
No, just there's a lot of stuff that's coming out that I'm excited about and excited to talk about
Me as
on
well.
this cast. So if there's ever anything that you guys are interested in or want to give us a shout or a point in the direction of something that you guys enjoy and want us to talk about, we would love to hear from y'all. So
Absolutely. And I'm still waiting on I can't remember which commenter left the comment about the Kingdom Come, but I never got any more questions. Definitely leave us more questions so we can talk more about it.
all right, thanks everyone for listening and hanging out. We hope to hear from y'all, and thanks for listening in.